Hello, Brock. Welcome in, my friend. Long time no see. I hope everything is going well for you. I have something. Tonight is going to be a little different. One of the reasons why I'm going live at an unusual time is because I have a special topic I want to discuss with everybody. Needed this today? I know that I certainly do too, my friend. Definitely so. Welcome in, everybody, to the Soul Group meeting. Welcome in. It is a pleasure to have you here. If this is your first time finding the Soul Group or seeing my face on here, I would appreciate if you give us a little bit of an introduction. Yes, Brock, I am feeling better. Still got, some sinus congestion going on, but definitely feeling a lot better than I have been. So once everybody gets in here, I'm going to get started with tonight's topic. I usually do not, as most of you guys know, I usually do not pre-select a topic that I want to discuss with everybody, but due to recent events and a major revelation for me, I do have something in particular I want to discuss with you. We not have anybody in here for the first time? If so, welcome to the Soul Group, my friend. And yes, I second that, Brock. There is nothing wrong with having a different viewpoint than somebody else. We're all about that here in the Soul Group. But it needs to be done respectfully in this group. There's plenty of other groups where you can do those kind of activities. Hello, Michelle. Good to see you, my friend. So welcome in, everybody, to the Soul Group meeting. I'm going to do a real quick introduction for anybody who may be here for the very first time. Welcome in, Soul Mom. This Soul Group is a community that we started for anybody and everybody who's interested in spirituality and spiritual awakening. This is first and foremost a community, a safe space for people to come together in communion, to share with one another and get the benefits of companionship, to be able to share your thoughts, your ideas, your beliefs, and whatever else. We all come from a different background with different sets of experiences, different spiritual experiences, and knowledge and wisdom as well. And when we come together, we can benefit from that, from each and other. And we're always looking to expand our soul group. So if anybody here is interested in any of those topics, stick around. Tonight's topic that I want to discuss with you guys, at least initially to kick this off. Thank you for that, all about. I appreciate that. For tonight's topic, to kick things off, at least anyway, I want to discuss spiritual warfare with you guys by sharing a cautionary tale. And there is an all-important reason that I want to talk about this. It's not my usual topic. This is not what I usually discuss, and I'm sure that you guys are all aware of that. But things have come to my attention lately that I want to share with you guys, and I feel like I'm being led to do so. Anytime that happens, I listen, because we usually, there's a reason behind that. So in order to start off this conversation, keep in mind, This is a cautionary tale. This is my own personal experience, and the only reason that I want to share this information with you is to cause people to think. That's James. That is a mighty bold statement from you, my friend, considering you have no idea what I'm talking about. I agree 100% all about. So this is not to spread negativity or fear, right? In fact, the exact opposite of that. It does no good to dwell on negative and fearful things, because then we attract into our environment negative and fearful things into our life. So I definitely do not want to contribute in that anyway. But as most of you guys know, my stance on these types of things is, sure, it's important not to dwell on negative things, especially things that cause us fear, because then, we can manifest that into our reality. But that doesn't mean bury our heads in the sand and pretend like it doesn't exist, because that can be equally as dangerous. The example I like to use for this, and I understand not everybody has the same belief, and that's perfectly fine. Hello, Deborah. If I was riding passenger with my friend in a vehicle, driving up a mountainside, and we're going around a swift curve, and I glance over and they're playing with their radio, and I notice we're getting ready to go through a guardrail and barrel off a cliff, I'm not going to pretend like I don't see that coming. I will get their attention, or perhaps grab the steering wheel and steer us to safety. And I tend to take that approach with day-to-day life, and of course spirituality as well. I think it's important that we strike a middle road, a middle ground there. Thank you, Deborah. So there is a way to be aware of the world around us, even those things that are inherently negative, without dwelling on them, feeding them our energy and manifesting that into reality, without burying our heads in the sand and pretending like those things don't exist. That is my personal opinion on it, and that's been my stance for years with you guys, and those that are familiar with me are well aware of that. So there's my disclaimer, and it will make more sense as I get into this conversation and this topic with you guys. It very much so. The 7-second degree, I like that. We are very much like tuning forks. Everything in existence is energy, vibrating at different intensities and frequencies. Science knows this now. This has been a universal truth forever. But this used to be secret knowledge that was relegated to the elite. But we're all aware of this now, or most of us are aware of this. But let me share a cautionary tale with everybody from my own personal experience. And again, I'm doing this because I'm feeling led to share this information with you. As with all information that I share with you guys, I implore you to think for yourself and question authority. Okay? Do not accept anything that I say or anybody else as absolute truth without engaging your own spiritual discernment and thinking for yourself. That is all that I ask of anybody. It is never my intention to lead anybody astray or in any direction, but to share information, to awaken other people to think for themselves instead of telling people what to think. I think that is a really important differentiation. Okay, so some of you guys know this. Some of you guys do not know this. But about 2.5 years ago was a critical junction in my life. And I'm not going to go through all my history because that will take too long. But years ago, I had a really powerful spiritual experience. Hello, Anna. Welcome in, my friend. And I was charged with a calling. And Up until that point, about 2.5 years ago, I had no idea what that looked like. I didn't know how to go about it. I didn't know what I was truly meant to do. And it bugged me that I did not have people to share with, people to talk to. A brief example of this, without going into huge tangents, is that I was born and raised under a predominantly Protestant Christianity, and it was fairly conservative Christianity. And anyone who's familiar with Christianity knows that mainstream doctrine holds no room for belief in reincarnation or karma or the law of one or any of the main tenets of spirituality. In fact, they believe that those things are all tools of the devil to mislead and deceive people, right? But in my very powerful spiritual experience I had, I relived past lives. I was told about my past lives. I was charged with my calling directly by Spirit, and I was shown a vision of the future. So, Shaky James, if you want to stick around for a while, I would love to discuss that with you, but I don't want to stop this story right now. My entire belief system was built on this foundation of the mainstream Christian doctrine. So when these spiritual experiences happened to me, I experienced a very powerful tower moment where my entire world came crashing down around me. And I struggled for many years to reconcile my newfound spirituality within this Christian framework. And what I've discovered over the couple of decades from then until now, anytime that I attempted to share those experiences and my thoughts and my beliefs with people I knew, people I grew up around, friends, family, that kind of thing, almost invariably, it was met with the same type of reaction. They didn't understand it. Sometimes I was told things like, that's crazy, or those are evil, demonic experiences. Either way, I couldn't talk to anybody. And this was brought about this like profound isolation with not truly being able to discuss these things with anybody. Very, very few people. I met one or two people in like 20 years that really got it, or that had ever had similar experiences. So about 2.5 years ago, I gave up looking for a community of like-minded people, people who were open-minded and willing to look at things outside of the box and discuss things such as reincarnation. I could not find a community like that. There was no church, there was no community, there was no circle of friends I could find, right? So I decided, if I can't find the right group of people, then I'm going to bring a group of people together. And that's what we're doing right here, right now. So about 2.5 years ago, I decided to start a TikTok, only because my wife had. I was completely opposed to it. I didn't like any form of social media. The only videos I had seen on TikTok were, the really kind of mainstream, immature, trendy little dances and silly videos and stuff. And it was pretty off-putting to me. But my wife started a TikTok, and very quickly she gathered around her a group of friends that had similar interests, similar likes, and it seemed like a really good thing that she was building. So I decided to give it a shot, and I was quickly amazed at the robust spirituality community that I found here on TikTok. I found out that there are thousands or perhaps even millions of individuals out there interested in spirituality, looking at things from a different perspective, thinking outside of the box. So I started to produce content and eventually started going live. It took me a while to get to that point. But anyway, that was the motivation for starting the Soul Group, which is what this live right here is. Now the cautionary tale, now that we've got the background. Early on, I recognized that through TikTok and these lives, that this was giving me a platform to be able to speak my truth, to ask questions and start dialogues and have conversations about things that was important to me that I couldn't talk to other people about. Thank you, Brock. I appreciate that. One of the big topics for me has always been reincarnation within Christianity. If any of you guys have never heard of that before and you want to talk about that, remind me once I get done with the story, and I would love to talk about it. But there are many things that didn't ever really make sense to me, and that my spiritual awakening experience brought up to the forefront. So I started talking about these things. I started sharing the truth that I had discovered, that I had been led to throughout the last 20 years of my spiritual journey. And our group started to grow. Shaky James, I really hope that you stick around. Because I've got some important information I'd like to share with you, if you're interested in looking at something that might not be inside your accepted beliefs at this point. So here's how things changed, right? Just got a question about this live. They've been doing that more and more. The last live that I did on here, several of you guys were there. And I think we may have talked about some things that struck a nerve on that live. The whole live was about think for yourself, question authority, beware of misinformation, learn to vet sources appropriately, how to distinguish manipulation from fact and things like that. But I was reported and my live was shut down because of that. Kim, please bear with me and hold that thought. I want to talk about those things, but I got to finish this. Thank you, Raul. Okay. So, what happened over the last 2.5 years, aside from building this fantastic soul group community and really starting to put the pieces of the puzzle together for myself, as far as what my beliefs are, with spirituality and where spirituality meets the teachings of Christianity, and my calling with what I've been asked to do. The pieces of the puzzle started to really fall into place. My attention was focused on very specific areas. I feel being led directly by Spirit, and quite a bit of truth has been revealed to me in the last 2.5 years through doing this. And I've reached hundreds of thousands of people in the last 2.5 years, sharing these ideas, discussing things like reincarnation. How do you fit concepts such as karma and reincarnation into a biblical context? Talking about things like the law of one within a Christian framework. All of those things, there's not very many people talking about anywhere, much less here. And hundreds of thousands of people have encountered that idea through this, not just myself, but every single person that I've talked to about it. If that's their first time and they truly take the time to dig into it, there's a good chance that they will talk to other people about it. So my point is, this has had a pretty far-reaching impact, even though this is a pretty small-scale operation. I don't have hundreds of thousands of followers, right? But in that span of time, my life has changed really dramatically. Shortly after starting this TikTok, we moved out of state to an area where we knew nobody. And I was directed by Spirit to do that. And as soon as we did, things started seeming to go downhill. There were no jobs in the area that we moved into. And when I say there's no jobs, I don't mean that there's limited jobs or that they're not great jobs. I mean there's no jobs. And anytime a job would come available, hundreds of people were waiting in line fighting over that same job. And the cost of living was actually higher than the area that we moved out of. So we've really struggled financially. Until earlier today, I never took the time to see the big picture of how things have happened. But numerous things have happened in the last 2.5 years that now I believe might very well possibly have been spiritual warfare. Just to give you an example of what I'm talking about, I've shared this story with the core of this whole group. Several of you have heard this. But several months ago, I needed to change my transmission fluid on my truck. So I changed the transmission fluid. The guy that was standing there talking to me while I was doing the work noticed a bolt was missing out of the back of my transmission. No big deal, right? So we were having this discussion, and I said, well, it probably just got loose from vibration from going down the road and backed itself out. And then I shared a story about how years ago my car had that same thing happen. I drove it into Walmart, went shopping, and loaded the groceries up and went to leave, and it would not go into gear. And I thought the transmission went out. But it turned out the bolts had just backed themselves out of the torque converter, and it would not move. So I'm sitting here telling this guy this story. And then we finish the transmission fluid change, and I take off driving down the road. I was going about 4 or 5 hours away during this trip, and it started making a really loud racket, deafening racket, and then it stopped shifting in and out of gear. So I was far away from home. I didn't have any tools, so I put it in the shop, and it turned out my story is exactly what had happened. The bolts on the torque converter backed themselves out, it tore up my transmission, and then would not go into gear. I shared that story with you guys as a cautionary tale about be careful with the thoughts that you think and with what you speak, because we manifest into our reality by virtue of our thoughts. And that's simply all that I accepted that it was at that time. But that day, I had to get a ride back to my house over 4 hours away because my truck broke down in another state. And then the very next morning, whenever I went outside to go into town in our other vehicle, it suddenly was messed up for the first time. The ignition, whenever I turned it over, all of the lights on the dash went crazy. Nothing was working right. It was like the entire computer just malfunctioned. So we went from 2 working vehicles with no issues whatsoever to both vehicles were completely down within a 12-hour span of time. And the same time that was happening, dozens of other things were going on that I'm not going to have time to mention every single thing. But over and over for the last 2.5 years, things like that have happened to me. Our family has been turned in to the state for neglect on our children. We've had to deal with that, but it was completely baseless, absolutely baseless. There was no crumb of truth in any of that, and in fact, that's what they wound up saying themselves. It was ridiculous, but it happened. So on top of not being able to find employment, struggling to come up with money to be able to pay all of our bills every month for the last at least year, we've never known that month, are we going to be able to cover our mortgage payment, or are we going to lose the house? It's just been one thing after another. And because it's been so much for me, I never took the time to step back and look at the big picture. And now I can see that the more I've done this, the more I have spoken my truth, the more I have shared this with the world, the more I've been under attack. And I now am completely convinced that a lot of this, I'm not saying all of it, but a lot of it has been the result of spiritual warfare. So, I know most of you probably have not heard all of the stories. But if you've not heard all of these stories, I'm going to share just a couple of these with you and tell me what you think about it. The big smoking gun for me, whenever I realized all of this, is last year sometime. I had a woman here on TikTok stumble across my live. She was another creator, and her name is Paige Hook. Several of you guys are familiar with her and her content. She didn't say anything at first. I didn't even know she was in here, but she was just listening. And I was talking about Yeshua. I was talking about reincarnation within Christianity, the law of one, and what I believe to be the true teachings of Jesus that were later twisted and distorted into a religious system which became Christianity, which I believe that there was and still is some truth in there, but a lot of it had been used to manipulate and control the population using fear. So she was sitting there listening to this, and then finally she said something, and she was like, it's been amazing. I'm glad I stumbled across your live. I would really like to connect with you, and invited me to join her live at some point. Later that night, I noticed that she was live, so I decided to jump on it and watch. And she offered to do a reading for me. And I was like, okay, sure, why not? Let's see what comes out. Right off the bat, she was like, your spirit guides are warning me very loudly that you need help. That it was not an accident. I stumbled across your content. I specialize in spiritual warfare and spiritual protections. And they're saying that you are meant to work with me to learn spiritual protections because you are under spiritual warfare. You are under attack right now. But it got stranger. She said, your soul has a very important calling. And if you do not take the necessary steps in order to protect yourself so that you can fulfill your calling and carry out your soul's mission, your soul could walk out. I'm being told to warn you about this. I'd never heard of a walkout. But I didn't really pay much attention to it, and I left the live. Later that night, I started searching walkouts, which is basically the idea that in certain cases, if your soul has an important enough mission, an important enough calling, and you decide to use your free will in such a way as to not fulfill that calling, if it's important enough, your soul could walk out of your body, leaving room for another soul to inhabit your body. And I said, whoa, no, I don't believe this. It was the first time I'd ever heard it, and I said, you know what, I choose not to believe this. I don't like the way it makes me feel. It doesn't sound right. I'm just going to ignore this and pretend like I never heard that. And then, as I'm laying in bed that night, thinking about these things, thinking about how I don't want to believe in the concept of a walkout, my youngest brother called me on the phone, who is very heavily into Christianity right now. And he was actually putting together a sermon. And he knows that I'm a little bit of a biblical scholar, layman, and he wanted to run an idea by me. And he's like, I know this is going to sound crazy, but just listen to this and hear me out. And he was reading from the scripture. I don't remember exactly the book, chapter, and verse and all that. But it was the place where Moses has, they've been wandering through the desert for years, and God in spirit leads him up to the top of a hill and shows him the chosen, the promised land for the very first time. And he says, the scripture goes something like, I have allowed your eyes to see what I promised to your forefathers, but what I have allowed your eyes to see, your feet will never set foot on. And then he just mysteriously dies. And his counterpart was there, his successor was there. And in the scripture, he puts his hands on him, and the spirit goes into him, and then he becomes the new leader of the Israelites and leads them into the promised land. And my brother, who knows nothing about spirituality, he only sticks to official doctrine within Christianity, mainstream. He told me what has been revealed to me by the Holy Spirit is that Moses disobeyed his calling. He refused to do what he was tasked with doing. And so because he would not do it, his soul left his body and went into, I can't remember who it was. Was it Aaron? I'm sorry, guys. I don't remember exactly who it was. I'll have to freshen up on that. But anyway, his interpretation of this was a walk out. That he had this all-important calling that God had asked him to do, and he refused to do it. So his soul left his body and went into another body that was capable of fulfilling that calling. And then his soul went on to fulfill that calling anyway. So my brother, without knowing anything about the background or anything about spirituality, called me at this critical moment while I'm digesting this and trying to decide if I want to believe in this or not. And he explained to me the one biblical reference to a walkout. Was it Joshua? Yeah, it was Joshua. Thank you, Brock. It was Joshua. Aaron was there. Aaron was the high priest. Crazy is the biggest understatement, I have to tell you. As I'm sitting here hearing this, I feel the Spirit move on me unlike I've ever felt in my entire life. And I knew in my heart that this was the Spirit warning me that this was a legitimate warning and that I better pay attention to it. So if you look at the big picture of things, while all of this is going on around me, while my world is collapsing in around me, I am being warned by a complete stranger who knows nothing about me and my circumstances that I am under spiritual attack because of the light that I'm sharing in the world, because of the truth that I'm sharing. And that my soul was telling me you need to learn spiritual protection. And if you don't protect yourself to the point that this doesn't prevent you from doing your calling, I'm going to have no choice but to leave, to walk out. So I was warned on two separate circumstances within a 24-hour period by two people who had no idea what was going on in my life. I took that as a pretty big sign that I was under spiritual attack. But it never fully set in the big picture of how for the last 2.5 years, the closer I got to God, the closer I came to fulfilling my calling, the more I've been under attack. The more times I've been live, the more times I've been under attack. The more I'm here, the more I'm sharing my truth with you guys, the more it seems that the world is trying to get me to stop. I cannot even begin to tell you all of the things that have been going on in my life. I can tell you that right now I'm filing for bankruptcy. We are always, every single month, we're trying to figure out how we're going to be able to keep our house, or, being turned in by DFS and them trying to come in and take our children for absolutely no reason. Their needs are always met. They're always taken care of. It's a healthy, loving, safe environment. We've been under attack in about every way that you possibly could be. One more story I want to share with you guys, and then I want to move on with this. But this is just to further cement the reality of this, and you'll see why I'm trying to share this with you guys. And I will ask for my wife's forgiveness in sharing this story. The only reason that I am sharing this is because of how important it is, and I know that not everybody thinks that this is real or a possibility. But several months ago, in the thick of this, when things were seemingly at their worst, I woke up. It was early in the morning time, and I was still laying in bed. I had not moved a muscle. and I was hovering between that state of asleep and being awake. I wasn't really asleep and I wasn't really awake. I had awareness of where my body was and where everything was in relation to me, but I was still slightly unconscious. And I became aware of a presence, and my entire skin crawled from my toes to my scalp, and every hair on my body stood on end, and I felt a very dark presence, and I could feel that it was to my left where my wife was laying in bed. And I began having a conversation with this entity in my mind with my thoughts. I wasn't moving. There was no speech, nothing like that. And this was a demon. Okay, I'm sharing my truth with you guys. Whether you choose to believe this or not, that is up to you. Okay, but I was having this conversation with a demon that was attempting to possess my wife at the time. I cannot tell you what I said or what I did, but I remember holding an exorcism in consciousness and casting this demon out in the name of Jesus while I was hovering somewhere between fully asleep and fully awake. It was the most uncanny experience I've ever had in my life. I've never experienced anything like that. It both terrified me and amazed me at the same time, because I could feel this entity there attempting to inhabit my wife's body. I immediately afterwards got up out of bed, tried to figure out, oh my gosh, did this really just happen? And then I recognized, okay, this could not have been a dream, because I was fully aware of where I was at, where my body was at, and where my wife was at. Even without moving a muscle, I knew that my wife was laying in bed right there. I could feel her. So I woke her up and explained to her what was happening. And of course, she didn't want to hear that. Nobody wants to hear that. And it was upsetting. It was incredibly upsetting. And right now she's probably upset that I'm sharing this with you guys. Understandably so, right? This is an incredibly personal, emotional, and powerful thing that happened. That she was completely unconscious to. She had no idea that this was happening. And I hope that she can find it in her heart to forgive me for sharing this so publicly. But this is incredibly important, guys, and this is the only reason I'm sharing this with you, because spirit is very, very real, okay? There are all kinds of spirits that exist in the world, and not everything has our best interest in heart. Demons are a very real thing, just like ghosts and spirits are a very real thing. And I am completely convinced that me and my entire family has been under spiritual attack for the last 2.5 years, because I am pursuing my calling that I was charged with by the Creator, by sharing truth and light in the world. And the more that I move towards that, the more that my family suffers for that. So this is a cautionary tale that I share with you guys. Again, not to spread fear or negativity, to spread awareness, right? And if anything, this gives me powerful confirmation that I am on the right track, that I am doing the right things. Does it dissuade me a little bit? I would be lying to you if I said no. It terrifies me, to be completely honest with you guys. Our family has suffered over the last 2.5 years. This has been one of the hardest, I won't even say one of, this has been the hardest 2-year period of my entire existence. And I know that it has been for my wife as well. Thank you for sharing that, Starshine. I appreciate you. So all of that to say, I know that I've told you, we've had conversations similar to this for a very long time. Anytime you step out onto the spiritual plane, and you take action using your free will. It's like standing in complete darkness on the astral plane and turning on a million candle power spotlight. All manner of entities will be attracted to it. Just like if you went out in a complete black field and turned on a spotlight, bugs are going to be attracted to it. It is the same way in the spiritual community, in the spirit world. And it is a natural consequence of awakening, of moving towards the forces of creation and trying to influence other people around you, because we are at war. This is a spiritual war, and nobody can remain neutral in that war. We are all in the middle of it. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that, Karen. If you are suffering, that means God is working in you. Thank you so much, Sharon. I'm glad that you were here to hear it. The Book of Enoch? Yes, absolutely. Welcome in, Songbird. Be careful while driving. Starshine, I agree with you 100%. This is a completely gigantic topic. This is certainly not something that I can hope to cover on one live. But that's how it works. And one other part of this that I have not shared with you guys, for anybody who does not know, I have a lot of children. I have an army of children. And I have to say, in the last 2.5 years, the behavior of my children has done a complete 180-degree turn. They have misbehaved unlike I've ever seen, throwing terrible fits and tantrums and hitting one another, really struggling with their behavior, with their emotions, with all sorts of things. And that is not an accident, and it's not a coincidence. That is a direct result of this influence. They are, and I say they, energies are acting on all areas of my life and every single one of my children, trying to get to me, trying to get me to stop doing what I am doing. I have 10 children. That's exactly what's been happening, Robin. That is 100% what has been happening. Yes, you heard that number correctly. I have 10 children. No, it's not because I'm Mennonite, or Catholic, or Mormon, or anything like that. We just love children. My wife and I both, we have a huge family. Yes, Karen, they absolutely are. With almost every area of my life that has been happening for the last 2.5 years. And I'm sharing this information with you guys to spread awareness again, and because I want you guys all to know how important you guys are to me and to my family. We need your guys' support. We need your prayers, more so now than ever, and I greatly appreciate it. If that is something that you feel open and called to do, it would be very much welcome. The only thing that I ask is that you would make sure and set the intention that that energy, that prayer and thought that you send our way would be only that which is in alignment with our best and highest good. Thank you for that. Congratulations, my friend. Exactly, Anna. This is not just me. This is anybody on the spiritual path. I firmly believe that. There are, whether you choose to believe in biblical scripture or not, all throughout scripture, there is example after example of this very thing happening. And I feel incredibly dense that it took me this long to see the big picture. of what's really been going on for the last 2.5 years. Even though I was explicitly warned by Spirit, explicitly warned and told that I need to work on spiritual protections and learn to protect myself and my family because we were involved in spiritual warfare. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate you. Yes, Robin, it does. And I have done that. Just know I have done that, my friend. But I think that is an important point that you make, Robin. And this is something that I've mentioned a few times on my live, but I've never spent much time with it. I personally believe, this is my own belief from my own experience and the studies that I've done, I believe that most human beings live under a massive misconception that every thought that we have in our mind that we entertain is of our own design, is a result of our own consciousness. I do not believe that to be the case now. I believe that we all, from the time we wake up until the time we go to sleep, pick up on other energies around us from the ethers, that thoughts and even emotional energy can be pushed onto us, attempting to sway us in one direction or the other, all the time. And it's not just as adults, it's even as children. That is part of the human condition. And we have to be able to recognize that for what it is and set appropriate boundaries to be able to weed out the weeds from the garden of our mind, to protect ourselves from outside influences. Because I do believe that that is a very real thing, and I believe that that's how things like demonic possession begin. It doesn't have to go that far, right? Oftentimes, and most times, I don't think that it does. I think that that's how things spiral out of control. That's how something bad will happen in your life, and then a thought will pop into your mind that says something negative. You know, well, this happened because you deserve that to happen. Or I'm worthless as a father because I can't provide for my children the way that I need to. And it increases on this downward spiral, all the while lowering your vibration and frequency, making you more and more susceptible to these things. And most of the times we don't even recognize it for what it is. The thought popped into our head, we assumed it was from our own consciousness, and we accepted it as such. And that is a very dangerous thing. And that is the main reason why I'm sharing this information with you guys, because I'm completely convinced this is our reality. And it's not just me. It's like this for all of us. Carla, I do agree with you 100%. Thank you, Mom. I appreciate that. Cleanse myself a lot lately. And Sharon, I'm so sorry, my friend. I just now seen your comment. I missed that. I'm glad that you are all right, my friend. Big Bang Hank, yes. I don't participate in either one of those nearly as much as what I used to, but I'm working on getting back into those things. I personally believe that the more we can raise our frequency vibration, the more immune we are naturally to these sorts of influences and attacks. But again, when we step out onto that spiritual plane, and we start moving towards the light, especially when we start actively taking a side, we are also painting a giant target on our back, because that light naturally attracts bugs, right? It attracts astral junk, the little nasties, the lower vibrational entities, and most of them are not demons. They are just low vibrational astral junk from the lower density vibrations of existence. but there's all manner of things out there as well. And I do believe that's a natural consequence of beginning the work of truly awakening. Trying to catch up with you guys. Wow, I'm glad that you made it here for this temple time. Thank you, Angela. I appreciate that, my friend. Paige, absolutely, Brock. Paige Hook is fantastic at that. This is her specialty, right? I've learned a lot in the last couple of years, but I've not even begun to scratch the surface. Paige Hook focuses the vast majority of her work, her learning, her experience in this area of spiritual protection and spiritual warfare. Starshine, I second that 100%. They hang with demons, though. Absolutely. Yes, I do agree with you on that. Thank you, Angela. I appreciate you, my friend. So one last thing before I change the topic. I think it is important to recognize that this information, this topic, is more important now than perhaps it has ever been. And I say that because of the time that we find ourselves in. My stance, my position and belief is that we are now on an all-important cusp between the old age and the new age of Aquarius, the golden age. We are collectively at a pivotal point in time to where every human being on this planet stands at a crossroads and must make a choice. Either we choose to continue down the path of self-destruction, of the way things have always been, of believing through this egoic misconception that we are all separate, therefore greed can exist, that I can steal from you to better my own stance, that I can rape, pillage, and plunder the earth in the name of greed and profit. The path of self-destruction. Either we choose to stay on that, or we choose right here and now to become part of the solution. That we begin to awaken, that every day we make the conscious decision that we're no longer going down that path of self-destruction and act accordingly. I think that acting accordingly is equally as important as the decision. But I do believe that that's where we're at in this period in time. And one more thing. I keep saying just one more thing. I think from everything, from the vision I was shown 20 years ago in my spiritual awakening and everything I've learned since then, I firmly believe that there is a cycle that happens on this planet roughly every 12,000 years that initiates a pole flip of this planet. And I know if this is your first time hearing this, you probably think that I am absolutely off my rocker or that I've lost my mind. But there is a mountain of evidence that points in this direction. There are innumerable prophecies that talk about this from every religion basically across the planet, spanning millennia and different continents, from cultures that never met or had any contact with one another, talking about this period of time that we're in right now. And it says that the earth will turn over, that the poles will flip at the end of the age and the beginning of the new age, the golden age, and yes, the 1,000 years of peace. I do firmly believe that we're in that period of time right now, and that the veil will fall as part of this magnetic polar reversal, and the wool will fall from our eyes, and the truth will be revealed, as is said in the book of Revelation, to reveal. That's what Revelation is all about. And that's where we're at right now, but everyone has to make a choice. We have to decide if we are going to continue down the path of self-destruction, or if we're going to make a course correction and evolve, if we're going to awaken. And of course, this topic of spiritual warfare and spiritual protection is all important during this time, because the world is more divisive now than it's ever been. The old world is in its death throes, and it knows it, and that's why there's been so much calamity going on around the world these last few years, and that will continue to increase, because certain energies want to take as much down with them as possible. Okay, so that's my spiel. That's what I wanted to talk with you guys about tonight. We had exposure of evil is definitely amping up. Hello, Spider Monkey. Good to see you again, my friend. One of the things that I always say whenever we're talking about the age of Aquarius, the new age, the next golden age, is the truth will be revealed. That's why the Apocalypse, the last book of prophecy in Christianity, is all about the truth being revealed. That's what the entire book of prophecy is about. Revelation means to reveal. Aquarius, the age of Aquarius, is all about the truth being revealed. In astrology, the glyph of the Aquarian age is a woman holding a pitcher, and she's dumping the waters out of the pitcher onto the land. That is the waters of truth, because Aquarius is and has always been known as the bearers of truth. So first and foremost, the age of Aquarius is about the truth coming to light, the illusions being dissolved away, falling away from the masses, and people waking up in mass. And I think that that's where we're at right now. Thank you for sharing that, Angela, and I'm glad that you found your way here. Guys, I apologize. I know I'm not able to keep up with all the comments today. Kim, I want to share your comment because I want to discuss that. I believe you are so right, but if you don't believe in Jesus Christ, you still have it wrong. Okay, that is the topic I want to discuss for a moment, and then we can talk about other things if you want to. Just to clear the air for anybody who's never heard me talk or doesn't know my stance on these things, I firmly believe that Jesus Christ, who's actually Yeshua ben Joseph, the real name, is an actual historical figure. I do believe that he existed and that he was the master. I also believe he was the firstborn over all of creation. But that's about where my beliefs in Yeshua ben Joseph co-inhabit alongside mainstream Christianity, because I don't believe in one life theism. I do not believe that we live only one life, and then based on the results of that very finite and limited existence, we will be judged eternally by a creator God who designed us to make mistakes and sin. I'm not judging anybody who does believe that. I just don't feel that way personally. I believe in reincarnation, and I believe that that is biblically acceptable, because there are numerous references all throughout Judaism and Christianity that talk about reincarnation. And I believe Yeshua ben Joseph himself talked about reincarnation. That he himself reincarnated numerous times throughout the Bible as key figures, beginning with Adam, the firstborn over creation, the Son of God. I'm not the first or only person to come to that conclusion. In fact, Paul himself refers to Jesus as Adam. he made that connection between the two. Jesus himself talked about John the Baptist, saying that he was a reincarnation of the prophet Elijah. And after his death, Jesus said, and he will return again to be the front runner for the return of Christ at the end of the age, in the beginning of the next age. So yes, I do believe in Jesus Christ. I do believe that he was the truth, and that he brought the truth to humanity to awaken us, to give us the keys necessary to free ourselves from slavery. I don't believe that he came to purchase our all of our sins, but rather that he came and showed us by example how to become like him, how to awaken to Christ consciousness, by accepting the truth that we are not all separate, that there's one consciousness that animates all life, whether it's you, me, the birds, or the air that we breathe. It is all one consciousness that is a part of God, and that truth will set us free. And not only that, but by seeing God in all life and then treating it accordingly. All throughout his ministry, he hammered that idea home, that God exists within each and every one of us. He said, you'll look here, you'll look there, you'll look everywhere for the kingdom of God, but you'll never find it, because the kingdom of God is within you, right? It's a huge topic. There's a whole lot to go on there, but just to give you an idea, that's where I stand on Jesus Christ. Thank you for gratitude. I appreciate that. My name spiritually means child of God. I like that. Okay, Kim, you got another excellent question. Let me talk about that. So what do you believe happens at the end of this world? Okay. Let me make sure that we're talking about the same thing before I really address that. What I mean whenever I hear you say the end of the world, what I hear by that is the end of the age and the beginning of the new age, the next age, that Yeshua himself talked about and gave a prophecy about. That's what I think of. I don't think the world will end. I don't think, and that's just my own personal beliefs, I don't think that the apocalypse is the end of the world. I believe that there is a grand scheme of things, a grand cycle, made up of ages is what they're called. The typical age is a little over 2,000 years. The great age is a full precession of the equinox, all of the way around the zodiac, and it's about 26,000 years. The completion of that great age, we enter into a new epoch, a new era of humanity. That is punctuated by full cycles and half cycles. The Yuga system, Cannibal Slayer, I do believe is based off of the same concept. The variations of time, depending upon who you talk to within the Yuga system, vary wildly. And I think that is due to mistranslation. But if you go back to the origins of the Yuga system, I think that they align very closely with the Great Ages, much like with the Mayan calendar. Okay, so the Great Age is punctuated by full cycles and half cycles. Roughly every half of that, about 12,000 years, give or take, the Earth experiences very profound changes on it. Thank you for the reminder, Brock. What I'm getting ready to explain and describe, if you've never heard this, Sounds like science fiction, or something like the plot from a bad movie, but bear with me. Roughly every 12,000 years, our solar system moves through a piece of space where it encounters a current sheet, a rippling wave of electromagnetic energy that emanates from the center of the Milky Way galaxy. For a long time, this was thought to just be a theory, but we now know this is true. Science has proven this. There is a wave of electromagnetic energy that ripples like the waves of an ocean, and each wave is about 12,000 years. So every 12,000 years, our solar system encounters the next ripple of this electromagnetic current sheet. Each wave is a reverse in electromagnetic polarity from positive to negative. So it triggers a magnetic polar reversal of our entire system, not just the planet Earth, but our entire solar system and our star, the sun. And it initiates a series of catastrophic events to unfold on our planet, and the other planets as well. And it kind of culminates in a polar reversal of the planet, which can trigger a true flipping over of the Earth. There is evidence of this in the scientific literature in almost every major discipline of the hard sciences. From woolly mammoths that have been found flash frozen in the Arctic with undigested food still in their stomachs, to flash frozen tropical plants buried under thousands of feet of ice in Antarctica, to the sediment deposits, ice core samples, evidence of floods on top of mountains where fossils from the ocean have been deposited on tops of mountains, all throughout archaeology and just about every major discipline out there. There's evidence that this has happened, and that it happens about every 12,000 years. I believe that coincides with the great ages that I was talking about. Noah's Ark, exactly. Anybody who does not know, that story is not purely found within Judaism. In fact, it originated in Sumeria, because Abraham came from Sumer, the father of Judaism, Islam, and Christianity. Abraham, he came from Sumeria, and he brought with him the legends from that area. But almost every indigenous culture on the planet has some variation of this flood myth, where they all record basically the same things in different words. And I believe Atlantis was an actual civilization that was destroyed in the last polar reversal of our planet, that their continent was broken up and sunk beneath the ocean during that last cataclysm. I don't know if that fully answered your question or not, but that's what I believe happens. Basically, a gigantic reset switch on our planet, that civilizations rise and fall, and then survivors are left to pick up the pieces on the other side of it. But we have amnesia, and we have no idea about our past, the history, or what the heck just happened, because science has discovered that part of this magnetic polar reversal has a tremendous impact upon our brain, and it triggers a very profound amnesia in the process. So we have no idea what in the heck just happened. But I believe it is not just a physical occurrence with physical earth changes, that it is first and foremost an energetic change and a spiritual change. And the reason why it happens is because as civilization rises, the world grows out of balance because of our actions of humanity. And nature loves balance. The balance must be restored. And so the reset switch is flipped. Civilizations are reset and the balance is restored. But it is primarily an energetic equation. And there's a very spiritual component of this. And it's what ends an age and begins the next age. And it doesn't take too much exploration to look at the world today and see a world very much out of balance. This is where we're at right now. A magnetic polar reversal is already well underway. And that's not a conspiracy theory, it's fact. It's pretty well documented. We know that the polar reversal is underway. Our magnetic field is losing field strength at an alarming rate. Earth changes are occurring all around us. The climate is shifting, yes, but it's not because of the official narrative's version where our CO2 emissions are causing greenhouse gases to shift the climate. It's because of this natural cycle. But that's only half the equation. The other half is the spiritual component of this. The same mechanism that triggers the sun to initiate our poles to flip is the same mechanism that is triggering mass spiritual awakening. It has been written, absolutely. Science knows, as an example right now, that the output of our star has changed. The part of the fusion process on the star is that it's producing a higher concentration of helium than it once did, and it makes the frequency of light that is emitting a lot higher in vibration. It appears through our vision to me a much brighter white than it used to. It used to be yellow, almost an orange color. Absolutely, Kim. You have to be really careful with everything, especially science. But that chemical composition has changed. It's producing more helium. It's vibrating at a higher frequency, and it is sending that higher frequency at the Earth, right? So that higher vibration is connected with our bodies, and it is triggering us to vibrate at a higher frequency as well. So it is triggering mass spiritual awakening. People are starting to wake up. We are starting to vibrate at a higher frequency. I don't think everybody is going to be on board with that, right? Not everybody is ready for the next step in evolution, which I humbly believe is Christ consciousness. Jesus came to this planet as a front runner to bring these ideas to the world and to give us a blueprint of ascension, to show us what it looks like to be fully awakened to Christ consciousness, and what that looks like. We all have that capacity, and that's what the age of Aquarius looks like. It looks like the awakened. It looks like fully embodying Christ consciousness through realizing that all life is sacred and holy. I cannot destroy the planet for my own profit if I am hurting myself. I can't steal from my brother if my brother is myself. We're all part of that same energy. And I know that's a whole lot I just threw out there all at once, but that to me is what the end of the world means. It's the end of an age and the beginning of the new age. And that's how we get to the 1,000 years of peace. And for anybody who does not know, Edgar Casey talked pretty extensively on this topic about the earth changes, about the polar reversal, about how Atlantis was destroyed in this process 12,000 years ago, how the sun would trigger our physical and spiritual evolution now in this generation, how our bodies would begin to vibrate at a higher frequency, and how women would become the gatekeepers to weed out lower vibrational entities from incarnating on the physical plane, that their uteruses would vibrate at such a high frequency, lower vibrational entities could no longer take up root and grow. So females become the gatekeepers in the age of Aquarius and are no longer, they're no longer allowed to incarnate on the plane. That's how we have 1,000 years of peace. Mr. Big Shop, I think that is an excellent question. And I don't think that a lot of people are prepared for my answer on that. this is my belief, guys, and the only thing I can ever give you is my truth, right? Not universal capital T truth, but my truth. And I always recommend to think for yourself and question authority. So don't take what I'm about to say and run with it and accept it blindly as the truth. I would much rather you work with that, use your own spiritual discernment, and allow the universe to reveal truth to you, as opposed to me, right? The convoluted scammer. It's really funny because that's what I was about to talk about. I recognize that not everybody is ready to hear what I'm about to say, but there is a belief that started in mainstream Christianity a few hundred years ago, and it has found its way, in my humble opinion, into mainstream spirituality today. And they go by different names, but the concept is the same, that the chosen will be raptured out and will not have to go through any of these negative events that go along with the polar reversal, the end of the age, and the beginning of the next age. I'm not on board with that 100%. I do believe that those who have been marked will be protected, will be kept safe in through spirit, that they will be led to the right areas, that their actions will be directed, and that they will be sealed, exactly, Kim, and be protected throughout this process as they are scheduled to inherit the kingdom. They are scheduled to be the ones to rebuild and build the new in the golden age of Aquarius. But I don't believe that simply because of our beliefs that we will be sucked out, and that everyone else will be left behind to deal with the consequences. Very much so, just like Atlantis. I that's just my own personal beliefs, and I know that this idea was popularized by Dolores Cannon about the New Earth, and I do believe in the New Earth, and I do believe in ascension to 5D consciousness. To me, that's Christ consciousness, and I think that that is the next step in our evolution. But I don't personally believe that we will just phase out from this level of existence that we're in and magically find ourselves in a vibrational heaven, basically, without having to go through that process. I think that this is very much a death and rebirthing process, much like the Phoenix, and that we're all here for a reason, and we're here to take part in that transition and to bring it about. And I think that those that certain people will be sealed with the name of God vibrationally, and that they will be protected from those things. But what would be the point if we weren't here through this transition, as everybody else needs the guidance, needs the direction? To me, it would make more sense that we're here and we experience that transition along with the planet, and that we rise from the ashes and rebuild the new Earth. That's just my own personal belief, and I don't expect everybody to believe the same way that I do. That's where I'm at right now. I do agree with you on that, Kim. And there's another idea. If you've not heard this yet, you might find this interesting. Songbird, I believe so, absolutely. This idea actually came from Edgar Cayce. This is the first time I had heard this. But for me, it rings true. My spirit agrees with this. He said, basically, that all biblical scripture was written to be understood in multiple different levels of consciousness. That at face value, It is for the layperson to teach morality, whether you're talking about the Torah or the book of Revelation or anything in between. It is meant to be accepted at face value as a story meant to convey morality. But at a deeper level, it is by those who have eyes to see and ears to hear a deeper spiritual significance to it that is revealed to us through spiritual discernment. And he said that the book of Revelation in particular was basically a handbook for ascension, that it explains and describes step by step what that process looks like, and that the scroll that we find beginning, I believe, in chapter 6 of Revelation, with the 7 seals holding it closed, is actually it is a description of what ascension looks like, with the scroll being the shashumna along the spine, and each of the 7 seals being one of the major chakras of our body, and the opening one by one is the advancing of the kundalini along the shashumna during a full ascension in kundalini awakening. And that's why it basically says that it explains Jesus going through this process and achieving Christ consciousness as well. I do believe that that's part of this process. And it's also, I humbly believe, why Yeshua said, lest ye be born again. I think this is the born again part. And then we all have to go through that process in order to achieve the full Christ consciousness and ascend to the 5th dimension. For gratitude, I personally think that I would challenge that. I haven't seen that video, so it's hard for me to say, but I am pretty familiar with the Edgar Cayce material, and I don't think that it will be a poof that it happens thing. I haven't come across any of the material through Edgar Cayce's readings that imply that. In fact, in several places, he pretty much says that it happens slowly, that it happens as part of a regular process. But I don't know. My assumption would be that would probably be a little bit of a distortion to fit the commonly accepted mainstream notion of kind of like this reflection of the rapture, of where the good and godly will just be poof and winked out of anything bad that might happen, and they will find themselves in heaven. I don't believe that there's a scriptural basis of that, and I don't believe that that's necessarily what's going to happen with this ascension process into the age of Aquarius. Hello, Higher Mind. Good to see you, my friend. Exactly, Kim. I agree with that 100%. And that's essentially my main problem with that, is it requires no work on our part. It basically implies that we don't have to do the work to get from A to Z. We just, if you believe, if you have certain thoughts in your mind, that you can manifest that basically for yourself. And I understand the concept of manifestation, and I very much believe that it is our reality, that our thoughts manifest into physical form. But I also believe that part of growth is struggle. All growth is through struggle. Another concept that I think is very interesting and that kind of supports this is within Judaism. They have a vastly different conception of this figure known as Satan. In Christianity, it evolved pretty drastically to be a completely separate entity that is diametrically opposed to the forces of creation, almost as equal but opposite power that somehow is almost capable, or maybe even capable, of overcoming the forces of creation and light, and that somehow we might all be sucked into this abyss of darkness. Within Judaism, it was completely different. Traditionally, they do believe in a Satan, but they believe Satan is the opponent, that Satan is there doing God's work to help us to grow. The opponent provides the opposition, something for us to struggle against so that we can overcome it. And by rising to the challenge to overcome that obstacle, we grow, we become stronger, we grow in spirit, we evolve. But that is ultimately the job and function of this figure known as Satan within Judaism, is to help us to learn to grow and evolve spiritually. And exactly, Campbell Slayer, as you say, that's what, especially within the Kabbalah, which is the Jewish mystic tradition, they believe Satan is the ego, that it is not some entity outside and separate from all of us, that it is within us and exists as the ego. And it kind of mirrors the Native American teaching about within us there's two wolves, and whichever one wins out is the one we feed the most. It's kind of the same concept within the Kabbalah, that the ego is the Satan figure. It is based on that premise, that illusion of separateness, that I am separate from you and I am separate from everybody else. and then that leads to the conclusion that my needs are different from your needs, and that everything is separate. So obviously I should try to one up you or get one over on you, because my needs are more important. But it's based on that illusion created through the inception of the ego. All life is one. That is the law of one. And I believe that is the ultimate truth that Christ brought to the planet. That is an interesting question. What part does the Antichrist play? I don't have all of the answers, but I can tell you what I honestly believe. Christ, Yeshua ben Joseph, and towards the end of his ministry, gave a prophecy about the end of the age, which I believe where we're at right now. And he talked about the coming of the new age. And he said that during this time, the birthing of the new age would be like a woman in childbirth, that there would be birth pains, and that they would basically start out mild and far between, and that they would start to become more and more intense, more and more painful, and closer together until the crowning, the moment the new earth, the new age is birthed into existence. I believe that that's where we're at right now, and we're all witnessing the birth pains getting more and more intense, more and more painful, and closer together as we prepare for the crowning. I think also this is why we've seen things appear to get a lot worse in our lifetimes. The dichotomy between the light and the darkness, which I personally believe is an illusion, but that's another story. The divisiveness, the rhetoric being ramped up, the earth changes increasing, the weather going crazy, every bit of it is all part of these birth pains, the birthing of the new age. And I think that the old systems that have been in place for, in some cases, thousands of years, such as religious systems controlling and subjugating the population using fear, reigning over the deaths of millions, if not billions of people, all manner of things, not just religious institutions, but there are many different systems at play. The old order is in its death throes, and they're well aware of that. And as we get closer and closer to their end and the crowning moment, the new beginning, I think that we will see an increase in polarity, an increase in divisiveness. like we've already been witnessing. And the crescendo of that will be the inception of this figure that the book of Revelation refers to as the Antichrist, which is basically the energetic equivalent of the polar opposite of the expression of Christ consciousness, which would basically, to me, would mean a force, an entity that would seek to mislead and deceive as many as possible into creating an increasing effect of this illusion of the ego, basically leading as many people as possible astray from that reality, lowering the frequency vibration as much as possible, most likely through fear and manipulation and deception, to keep as many as possible from awakening, from ascending. And that's my take on how the Antichrist, what the role is in all of this. I don't, like I said, I don't have all the answers. And I really wouldn't want to venture much of a guess on that, other than it's already happening in the world around us, that as we get closer and closer to this moment of crowning, of the new age being birthed fully into existence, things are becoming increasingly polarized. We can see it very powerfully in our own country, in the United States. People are becoming more and more divided on numerous issues. And I think that is the natural consequence of the ending of this cycle. Barbara says, what is a good book to read on quantum physics? So here is my recommendation, Barbara. There's a book called The Field by Lynn McTaggart. She is not a quantum physicist. She is an investigative journalist. But what she did is she took the work of top scientists in the field of quantum physics, quantum mechanics, and many other different disciplines, and weaves them into, I believe, a cohesive story that bridges the gap between science and spirituality in a very profound and beautiful way. And for me, what the result wound up being was probably the closest thing to a unified field theory that I've seen. There's a lot of quantum physics in there, but again, it's not written by somebody who comes from that field, which to me is a good thing because it makes it more easily digestible. But there's plenty of citations in there of the scientific studies, the theories, and all of that, where you can go and do your own research. Honeybee says the Antichrist is the flesh, material world, adversary to the spirit. Exactly. In my humble opinion, the representation of that force is the ego. The high amount of darkness is allowing the expansion of light. Very well said, alchemist. Nature must have balance. And this is an interesting concept that I've stumbled across in many different areas, not only in metaphysics, but in even prophecy. In numerous writings, there's this idea that there is an equal opposite expression of an energy. So you have the Christ figure of Christ consciousness, this expansion of consciousness, this increase in the vibration of energy through mass spiritual awakening and ascension. But you also have the exact opposite manifestation of that, which is many people downwardly spiraling deeper into materialism, into the flesh, into the ego, into deception and self-destruction. And so if you have a Christ figure, you have the Antichrist figure, which is a polar opposite manifestation of polarity, of dualism. But again, I found that in numerous different places, including prophecy. I'm not presenting this as truth, but one of the more interesting examples of that I read in a book by Dolores Cannon, Conversations with Nostradamus, Volume 2, and she was talking to Nostradamus in the spirit about a particular quatrain involving the end times, of what he referred to as the end times, which is exactly what I've been talking about this whole time. And he gives a prophecy explaining his quatrain about how basically nature has to balance itself out in that expression of energy, and that's why these two seemingly polar opposite figures manifest on the plane at the same time. And I thought that was an interesting concept. True or not, it's an interesting concept. Alchemist, I agree. I think it's more than just the darkness. I think that we have to have, in the third dimension, duality is a universal constant, in my opinion. I think that it is necessary for expression and experience in the third dimension. And that's also why we have to have free will, right? If we are all truly an expression of the divine, what would be the purpose of free will? So that we could act in ways outside of the divine mind, so that we could experience. Because without that, there would not be the possibility of experience. Like you said with darkness, how could you experience the light if there was no darkness? You couldn't. You would have no frame of reference. You would have nothing by which to measure or judge light by if all was light. And that is the necessity of this place. I awakened to Christ consciousness without any knowledge of any of this. That's amazing, my friend. Thank you for sharing that. Ruby, I agree with you on that. It is not a new book. The Field is not a new book by any stretch of the imagination. I don't know if I'd say it's over 20 years old, though. I might be mistaken on that. But I don't think it's quite that old. It's not a new book, and we've certainly learned a lot since then. But for me, it's a great introduction onto the topic because it is written by an investigative journalist instead of somebody who is from the field of quantum mechanics. I don't know how many of you guys have read books by quantum physicians, but they can be kind of hard to wrap your mind around the language, the verbiage, and the concepts that they're talking about. That's not to say that it's unintelligible or you can't understand it, but to me, it was kind of refreshing to read one that is from somebody with an outside perspective. The language is just a lot easier to understand. The music playing in the background is 4:32. Let me make sure I'm not mistaken on that. I've listened to this one for so long on my live. I might be wrong, but I believe it's 400. Yeah, it's 432 hertz. It's called Heart Chakra Healing Music. Hello, astrotherapist. Good to see you, my friend. Hope everything's going well for you. All right, everybody. So I'm going to have to be ending this live pretty soon, so I can start working on getting my children rounded up and ready for bed. But if you guys have any final topics or anything that you want to discuss, now's the time to do that. Hello, Jody. Unfortunately, I'm getting ready to end this live now. I went live at an unusual time today. But for anybody who did miss any part of this live and you want to be able to go back and watch it, I will be uploading this to my YouTube channel, so you can go back and watch that. Thank you, Anna. I appreciate that. That's an excellent idea, Brock. I second that, especially coming off of this intense solar storm that we just had. You know, it's been a crazy live whenever we come off of a level 4 solar storm, and I haven't mentioned a word about it. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that, Alchemist. I hope that all of you guys know one of the objectives of this soul group is to help other people grow, to help everybody grow and reach and rise to their full potential. So anytime that you guys want a shout out, if you want to share information or try to funnel people into your content, please feel free to do that. And I encourage you guys, as many of you who are interested, to check out Alchemist's content. I would love to see you live, my friend, and thank you for sharing that information. Thank you for gratitude. I appreciate you. It's raining here, so muddy feet for me. Well, rain is very, very cleansing, energetically very cleansing. Been asked to make a curtain call. Well, I'm glad that you listened, my friend. I pray that it goes well for you, as I'm sure that it will. But if you want to do an actual announcement about something like that on a live, feel free to do that. Let me know if you want. You could actually join me up here on a live sometime, and we could do an announcement. You could have a discussion about that or something if you want. Well, I appreciate you, Alchemist, as always. And the same goes for any of you guys. I would do anything that I can to support you guys on your spiritual path, and I hope that everybody knows that. All right, everybody. So I guess I'm going to go ahead and sign off on that note. I want to thank each and every one of you for sticking with me and for sharing this time and space with me. You guys truly mean a lot to me. To have a beautiful community like this where we can come together and connect with each other is truly invaluable. So thank you all for being a part of this and for giving me this platform to speak my truth and to be heard. That is a fantastic gift. Thank you all so much. I love each and every one of you, and I hope everyone has a fantastic night. I will see you soon. Good night.